So what I want to talk to you about today is how we respond rather than react, and how we can get in touch with the polarities that exist within us when we have situations happen that trigger our nervous system. So the other night at 2 a.m. I was rudely awoken by a situation on the street outside. My neighbours were having some kind of domestic and were screaming and shouting at each other outside the front of the house. Why they chose to do this outside the front rather than the back where there's not really anyone behind, or even in the house, I don't know. But as someone who is autistic and sensory is my main kind of method of getting overwhelmed, being awoken to shouting and screaming and swearing like this was really triggering for my nervous system. Now, I could have gone into, and I noticed myself going into, two immediate responses, and these responses were anger and compassion. So I felt in that moment that if I had gone into anger, and because I then was awake for 2 hours after that, because I was so dysregulated, and I have the tools to regulate myself, but half an hour of someone screaming and shouting and saying the F word in the street, pretty activating, right? So one response in me, one part of me was anger, and I've worked a lot on my anger shadow. So the anger can come up when it is needed, but it is how I direct it that is important. So I wanted to go knock on the door the next morning and say, I hope you realise that lots of us were kept awake last night. I think we were the only ones, like some of the other neighbours were up and about as well. Do you realise the impact you're having on the street? This isn't the first time. They had another domestic a few weeks ago out in the street. So one immediate response was anger, and like the next morning I wanted to slam my car door outside the house and wake them up. That was like one immediate reaction. And the other immediate reaction I felt in me was compassion. And this is where in the past I would have gone into. So in the past, because I was in a place of over empathy, I would think, oh wow, like this is my responsibility to help. I'm the neighbours, they were out the front of the house. There's obviously some issues with all of my skills and training. I should really help them. Like that is my responsibility. And part of me wanted to go round and say, really worried about you after what happened last night. Are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help? Do you need to talk? Is there a problem with alcohol or substance abuse or something like that? The fact it was 2 a.m. But I didn't do either of those things. So this was also helped by the fact that my amazing friend John Binney wrote a song for me and released it and sent it to me that morning, called Surrender Gracefully, which is exactly what I needed to hear. But once I had regulated my nervous system, moved my body, did some breath work, what I then realised is, hang on, maybe this is a call for help energetically. And I know full well, deeply, that I have moved to this area to help this area energetically. So I did some clearing on the land. There's a lot of blocked energy here, which is why I've had to move here. So whilst it might feel a bit dense at times, I know I'm here for a reason. So I remembered my gifts and skills, and I did help, but I helped energetically because it felt like a cry for help from the land, from the area, from what was going on in the road. So I did some quantum healing on the whole road, and then brought some nature in and cleared the energy of the place through as well. So when we notice our immediate responses, we notice the polarity. So the polarity within me was compassion and anger. So I could have quite easily gone into one of those. Old me was compassion, new me was time to set some boundaries and be angry, this is not acceptable. But instead I used that energy that I was feeling to put that back into myself, to regulate myself, and then to actually take action. So it really is that noticing of both states. And for some of us this can be like unconscious. So for me the anger was unconscious in the past, and the compassion was forefront with what I was doing. But when we notice both, we can then choose to balance and decide how we're going to use that energy for good. So this is all about that noticing, that pausing, and then responding and remembering our gifts and actually what is really going on when we zoom out, and how do we actually need to help and allow others as well to play out their free will. So it might be that they needed to have that argument out the front of the house, so the police gets called, and then that then sparks one of them to give up drinking, or, you know, something like that. So actually, if I'd have gone into anger or compassion, that might have meant that their free will wouldn't then play out. Or, you know, something worse could even happen, but that's, you know, that's not my responsibility. That could simply be their free will playing out, which is pretty tough for a people pleaser. But that is kind of, you know, when we step back and we go, okay, like, what is the bigger picture of this situation, and then how can I help? This just transforms everything. So I hope that by sharing this story, this helps someone.